I don't know if you've had the opportunity yet to do some basic number crunching, but what is your sense? Because remember, the new tax regime didn't really take off after 2020. It had very few takers. People were not willing to give up their exemptions. And people I know, I myself, when I did the math, it didn't make sense for me to move to the new tax regime. It needed a sweetener. Is this enough of a sweetener?
At every tax slab, we will have to rework the tax paid post deduction in the old regime and with the new regime. I would have imagined if there is such a big push in the budget, they would have done the maths to see that it actually makes a difference for people to shift. I have not had the opportunity to actually open my Excel sheets and plug the numbers in. I shall do that in a while. But my sense is that rather than get into this whole regime of deductions, exemptions, if it makes sense, then you move. Also, Tamanna, remember one thing, that people of our age, my age, people who have been paying taxes for over 15, 20 years, 30 years, their incomes are not dependent on that 1.5 lakh tax deduction, which benefits them in terms of savings. Their savings have moved far beyond.
Yeah.
So you don't mind, and there's a whole savings and investing habit which has built up. So that crutch is no longer needed. If you can give it up, and if it makes sense to move to the new system, it should make sense for you to do that. It just means lower compliances with figuring out where is the check that I gave for my medical insurance, take a photograph, keep it, file it. All of that is gone. So in terms of just ease of filing your returns, it makes it easier.
You know, I would say the only question mark there, and I absolutely agree with you, 80C has become redundant a long time ago. In terms of a 1.5 lakh rupee limit in this day and age with this kind of a, cost, doesn't make sense. What about exemptions on housing loans? Because remember, the big boost to residential real estate also came in part because of those exemptions. You had exemptions on principal, on interest as well.
So the deductions, so exemptions are income which is not offered for taxation. Yeah. Deduction is when you do some spending or investment. That amount is taken away from your gross taxable income. So yes, for housing, there has been that cushion of getting that deduction. And remember, it's 1.3 billion people, middle classes of whatever, 200, 300 million, which will be sliced across different ages. There could be an age group for whom that deduction becomes very important. So if a couple is buying a house, I think you get a fairly high deduction if both take a home loan, because both the principal gets you 1.5 lakh and the interest, I think now gets you 2 lakh. So together you do get a very large deduction. But a person who's in their 40s has probably paid off their home loan. So we don't claim that deduction anymore because there isn't a home loan anymore. So it depends on your age and stage. There is never going to be a rule which fits everyone. So especially if you're a young starter out family, that deduction on home loan may swing the balance to stay with the old regime. So you do your math. We will be putting out the numbers soon. But ideologically, don't move to any tax regime. See what works for you. What is your age stage? What is it that you are getting back as a deduction? And then you choose to move or not move. It's an opt-in for the old regime. So be careful at the tax filing time.
Okay. Do you think this is a game changer, Monika? When all the talk was taking place of what does the Indian salaried middle class get? We don't get the bang for our buck. We are just, it's a one-way street in terms of our contribution to revenues, but we don't really get anything much for it. In your view, is this cosmetic or is this a game changer?
The middle class also is beginning to hopefully sense that the gravy train is on the growth path rather than a little bit of chiller here, there. Look, how much can the government give away? We all understand that you need tax revenues to spend on infrastructure. Now, the fact is that for the last 2 years, we've seen a major push on infrastructure. So look, I think nobody is people are fairly sophisticated in their thoughts. If you see a government spending it all away, farm loan waiver, subsidies, this, that, if you see the treasury being emptied on populist expenditures, then that paying of that taxation hurts. But if you see capital expenditure happening, 80% of that capital expenditure was on roads and railways and ports. These are multipliers. At some point, that multiplier begins to happen. And Tamanna, one more thing. So there is a whole conversation about unemployment in India. Anybody who wants a job, and not a government job, who wants to work, is skilled or is willing to get trained, there is work, there is a job. It is, the fact that there has been free food for a large part of the population, along with subsidized this, subsidized that, the incentive to actually get into a formal sector job has gone down. So once these incentives start to dismantle, we will see formal employment also increase. So the middle class is sort of taking all of this into account and saying, what benefits me more? Higher growth of the economy, which means potentially more job opportunities, and then higher wages. Tamanna, I joined the workforce in 1991. I'm that old. It took, in 91, I started on a salary of 1,760 rupees. In 10 years after 91 reforms, I don't have to tell you how the salary structures changed. The multiplier effect I have seen in my own personal history and that of my cohort. It's a wave which you ride up. You're educated, you're skilled, you're willing to work hard. We were not super smart. We were just average intelligence, hardworking people.
Monika, you're being very humble.
When the economy grows at 6, 7, 8%.
You're being very humble. I have to say.
No, honestly.
We are very happy to have you today on the channel to talk about what really, really matters. And I know you have other commitments, so I want to thank you for spending the time with us where it mattered and breaking down this new tax regime. I'm going across to my colleague Radhika. Thank you, Monika Halan there. Fantastic.